I've developed an addiction step-by-step process for dealing with addiction, and I guess I could run through it, but the person would have to have appreciated the breakthrough experience and the Demartini method to really appreciate it. But one thing I'm absolutely certain about inside of addiction, and I know this is going to go against the grain of what has been indoctrinated into people's paradigm, because most people are now trying to make it a disease so it can get covered by insurance and a genetic reason and this and that. But listen, nobody will ever do something unless they perceive that they're going to get more advantage than disadvantage, more rewards than risks. You got to understand that cornerstone of human behavior. And that includes even people that say, I got to stop this drinking, it's killing me, or I got to stop this smoking or this overeating, it's killing me, and I got to stop. They are not going to stop as long as unconsciously they get more advantages than disadvantages, more rewards than risks. I have worked with so many people on this issue that I'm certain that's the truth. And what's interesting is people live in a fantasy that something's doing it to them, and they can't stop it, and it's out of control. What I find by going through my method is I ask people, let's say they want to stop overeating, or they want to stop a drug or something. I ask them, what's the benefits of taking the drug? What's the benefits of overeating? And they look at me like, what? I got to stop it. Why are you asking me the benefits? I want to know the benefits. You wouldn't be doing it if you didn't get a benefit. So let's take your unconscious motives and put them up on the surface and get conscious about them. So I have them write down 150 benefits. And usually during the time they do, they uncover a whole lot of unknown, unconscious reasons why they're doing what they're doing. I just got to do one just like in the last few hours. And it's really interesting because I find that sometimes people overeat. A lot of women do this to protect themselves from having relationship dynamics that were painful in the past, because they don't want to get back in those same situations that occurred when they were thin and sexy before. I watched this happen. And so people have unconscious painful experiences and make them do what they do, and their values are driving it. So when I write down 150 benefits of why, what the benefits of getting out of doing what they're doing, they have a whole bunch of realizations of why they're doing it. And once they come to those realizations, I then come up with and ask them, so what are viable alternatives to get those same benefits? Because until we have a viable alternative come up that we can do to give us the same benefits, we're going to keep using that strategy because it's working. So I have to come up with 5 viable alternatives for each of those benefits, which means there's about 750 of them. And this takes more than a night, you might say. This takes days and sometimes weeks to get this out of them. And once we get that out of them, we look at which ones showed up most frequently, because they're redundant, and usually find there's about 40 out of the 750 that are redundantly showing up, and we look at which ones showed up highest on the priority list. I usually take the top 5 out of that 40, and then I use them as viable alternative strategies that we can put our energies to instead of doing the addiction that they have. I link the viable alternatives, the top 5 viable alternatives, to their highest values, and make, enormous links. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of links until I know I've glially myelinated the brain, a new pathway. Then I come back and I demyelinate the brain away from the original addiction. I go in there, now we can look at the drawbacks. It's very unwise to condemn a person for their addiction and add drawbacks to it, try to point out the drawbacks until they have viable alternatives, or otherwise you're going to create a stress which is going to make them do it further. And I go in there and I then delink to their highest values the addiction. And once I do, they're now associating pain with it, but they have new viable alternatives to get the same benefits that they once got from the so-called addiction. And then I go and look for the subdiction. I go, because there's never an addiction without a subdiction. You never have somebody addicted to something that gives them a pleasure without them having a pain. And I go in there, and it averages 3 plus or minus 2 different events in their life that are very painful that I got to go in there. And then I pull out the Demartini method, the general Demartini method on that to clear it. Because as long as that's there, they're going to go back to an addictive behavior again, because they're running from something, seeking something. And whenever you have a perception in the past that's got more pain and pleasure, you're going to constantly have in your imagination a fantasy that's going to give you more pleasure than pain, an addictive behavior. So I have to clear those. Then I go through what I describe in the breakthrough experience on Sunday. I go through the 0 to 10, 10 to 20, decade by decade clearing of all lopsided perceptions that you carry around in your life. So I go in there and say, so when your mommy ridiculed you, who was praising you? When your buddy criticized you, who was praising you? When somebody rejected you, who wanted you? I go in there and I put the puzzle back and I make sure that the people see things in perfect equilibrium and set their minds free. When I do that, their appreciation of themselves, they're more poised, they realize that they don't have to live in fear and guilt anymore, and it's just freeing. And then I go in there and I also then get them on a nutritional program that makes sure that they get vitamins and nutrition in them that they need. I make sure that they get a mission statement and a clear direction based on their highest values of what they really want to do in their life, so they have something to keep their mind occupied with. Because when you're fulfilling your day with things that inspire you, you're not likely to be doing things that are addictive. So those are just some of them. There's way more, but that's just some of the things that I do with the addiction.